Bobby Maximus, UFC vet, author, crazy shape. And we were just talking about, I think the best title of them all is a big time father. How are you doing? I appreciate you coming on the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You know, when we went live with Ryan Hollins, I was like, you look so familiar because the first sport I ever fell in love with was UFC. I did jiu-jitsu, I did wrestling, Muay Thai, boxing. And I used to watch. I fell in love probably actually when you entered it because I saw season 2, right? With
Yep.
Rich Franklin, Matt Hughes. Rich Franklin was one of my favorite fighters growing up. And then, of course, I went back and watched UFC 1, and I fell in love with the Pride days and watched a lot of Pride. But yeah, I'm like, you look so familiar, and I knew I've seen you before. And then I'm like, wait, UFC veteran. I'm like,
yeah, that's me.
That's you right there. So it just kind of put 2 and 2 together. Last Maximus, I mean, it's just meant to be. So I appreciate you coming on.
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's funny you say that because I actually wasn't that good at fighting. I mean, like, it's a relative term, right? Like, if you look at an NBA bench player, even if you're an NBA bench player, statistically, you're the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Right. I was watching a stat the other day that out of 1 million kids that play basketball, 4 end up playing in the NBA.
Insane. And that's why we're so quick to tear these athletes down. And when I covered the Orlando Magic, like, I've seen them warm up. I'm like, you guys don't understand. The worst player on this team is beating anybody in your town.
Well, probably beating anyone in Division I college. Like, there's a lot of people in Division I college that were All-Americans that don't play in. I mean, if you think about it, in a year, how many people get drafted? 64, 60, like, that's it. And then there's a group of people that maybe get a tryout, maybe play in Europe, maybe get a G League spot. But, like, how many college players are there in Division I and how many get drafted? It's minuscule, right? But at the end of the day, I was a win a fight, lose a fight fighter. I didn't have a stellar career. I'm not a George St. Pierre. I'm not a Matt Hughes. But if you were into fighting when I fought, you know everybody on the roster because it was a smaller, more intricate thing. And if you were a fan of the sport back then, you knew everybody in the 205 division. You knew everybody in the 155 division. Now, I was a professional fighter, and I can't keep track of who's fighting anymore. Like, it's just
every weekend. Yeah, there's a fight every weekend. Back in the day, it was once a month. And then I remember that one pay-per-view. We'd save up the money that we can, and it was like $60. I think that's really never changed. And we'd watch it. I mean, I remember falling in love with Randy Couture versus Chuck Liddell. And I saw you fought on a fight card with Bob Wawu. I always say his last name incorrectly, but I remember Babalu, there it goes. And the way Chuck Liddell would just step back, and it looked like he wouldn't even punch that hard, but it's just he would hit you just right at the right point, and you're done. And I remember watching the Randy trilogy and the Tito Ortiz, and like I said, the Rich Franklins, the Matt Hughes, when Matt Hughes got tapped out, but the way he fell, I think it was Carlos Newton was on him in the triangle against the cage, but he technically knocked him out when he fell because he was like on a standing triangle choke. I love those days. So that's initially what got me into really love sport. And I was so happy I got into mixed martial arts early because it taught me so many different lessons I wouldn't have learned unless I went into mixed martial arts. Granted, I never made it to the UFC or whatnot, but just training day in and day out, the commitment, it humbles you. You get beaten. It was a lot of fun. And I really do, like I said, appreciate you coming on, just like a kid in the candy shop type of moment.
Nah, thank you. And I would say this about your MMA stuff. Maybe you could have made it. Like, the interesting thing with fighting that a lot of people don't realize, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? The rise to the ranks through MMA is not progressive like it is in basketball. Like, how old's that Mikey kid? 14, 13, 15?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been hearing about the Ball brothers forever. Right. You know, who's the kid that just declared for Memphis? Amani Bates.
Oh, yeah. Amani Bates has been since he was middle school. We've known about him.
There's a track record there. With MMA, it's a little different. Fighters come and go. Right. There's kind of a rankings, but it's not really official. You don't have to start at 10. There's no AAU league. Like, it's really hard to keep track of who's in it. So what I say to people, the way MMA works is being in the show, it's a mix of skill, but also good fortune. who you know, who your manager is, whether a fighter from your camp gets on or not. There's a whole lot of other things that are at play behind the scenes. And so there's a whole group of people that were probably good enough to fight in the UFC, but just never got a shot. And I guess that does happen in basketball and football too, depending who your coach is, depending what recruiter shows up, all that kind of stuff.
Right. And MMA is fairly a young sport when you look at, well, traditionally speaking, it's the oldest sport when you think of just combat. But when it comes to like the NBA and NFL being established as a growing brand or a growing business. But yeah, I loved it. I was better at that than I was basketball, hands down. And I never lost a Muay Thai fight. I never lost a jiu-jitsu match or wrestling match. But I just picked up a basketball. I'm like, I'm not getting hit. I'm like, this is fun. I look forward to practice. And so I just gravitated towards basketball. But let me ask you this. What initially got you to say, I want to be a fighter? Like, that's one question I've always was curious about because everyone has a different reason, but it's such an extreme sport. You're getting beat or you're beating somebody. Like, what was it, a day? Was it a time? You're like, you know what? I want to fight.
I got two answers for you. It's a part A and a part B. Part A was I was bullied really heavily until I was 15, 16 years old. I couldn't make any of the sports teams. I absolutely loved basketball. Like growing up in the 90s, I love the Bulls. I love Duke, like the Christian Laettner years. Hold on a sec. Yeah, buddy? Can I go play Jordan now? No, after I'm done, we're going to go apologize, okay? I'm doing a podcast, go in the room and watch TV. This is like the life of a dad duty, it's my full-time job. But I love basketball. I love Duke. I love the Bulls. Some of my fondest memories as a kid were watching basketball. I remember when the Toronto Raptors got their first team. Like, that's like all I wanted to do, but I just wasn't good enough. I couldn't make any of the sports teams. I was a huge nerd. And, when I say bullied, I think everyone's bullied to a degree. Even some of like, look on social media right now. Like, just as an example, Joy Taylor, she's one of my favorite sportscasters. Like I think she's really insightful. I think has the ability to call it like it is without being overly sensational or contrarian, because I think that's where the world is going right now. You got to have your hot take. She's level-headed. She's beautiful. But people make so much fun of her on social media and attack her and bullying her. It makes me sad. Charlie Caruso's another one. Carrie Champion's another one. Maria Taylor. Like, Max Kellerman gets bullied all the time. So everyone deals with it. But I was punched in the face every day. Kids drew on my face with marker. They wedgied me. And it all culminated for me when these 4 hockey bullies beat me up and broke my collarbone. And I didn't want that to happen anymore. And I was scared. So I joined the wrestling team. And my first year, because I was not athletic and I was shy, I lost every match. So I lost out of 40 matches, I won 0. My second year, I won 1 out of 40. And then I found the weight room because I needed help. Got pinned under a 45-pound barbell, but I just kept trying. And I don't even know why. I'd like to tell you right now, it was because I just didn't want to get bullied anymore. And this was better than being bullied. You know what I mean? But I can't go back in time and ask myself that question. Anyway, I started to get good, and then I got really good. And then I wrestled at a really top flight university, and I almost made the Olympic team. Wow. But I didn't. And I didn't know what to do. I was heartbroken. I had no direction. It was like, fuck, I'm not really done with this thing yet, but I'm like, the sport's telling me I'm done. Like it was, like, I wanted to play, but I was, shit, what do I do, right? And I was fortunate enough to meet a guy named Sean Tompkins. And Sean, he died in 2011. Sean trained Mark Hominick, Sammy Stout, Christoph Szynski. He was Boss Ruden's right-hand guy. And I was lucky enough to meet him. And he's like, hey, I heard you're really good at wrestling. Like, we need some help with our wrestling. Do you want to come out to this MMA thing? And I'm like, well, what's MMA? And he's like, oh, it's like fighting in a cage, like the UFC. I'm like, oh, I've seen that. Like, because I had seen UFC 1 and 2. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go out and teach wrestling, because if you can't play anymore, why not teach it?
Right.
And so Sean's specialty was kickboxing, and I started doing it. He's like, you're really good. And one day he came up to me and said, do you want to, and I quote, fuck some ring girls, get paid $500 and punch some people in the face. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I am in, brother. So I went to my first fight in Edmonton. That was in Canada. Beat some dude up, fucked a ring girl, got paid $500. It was a wonderful experience. He's like, you want to do that again? I'm like, yep. The price went up to $750. Did it again. Next time the price went up to $1,000. And yeah, I'm still having fun with the girls, except they're getting hotter. You're working from like the C-level ring girls to like the A-level ring girl. You're getting paid your money. You're hanging out. You're having fun. And I mean, it sounds kind of crude, but like, what better life for a 23-year-old kid? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just a dream come true. And I'm just fighting and having fun. And the next thing I know, I found myself on the Ultimate Fighter reality show, and I was on my way.
That's incredible. And, you know, it's like, I'm not that you wish to have been bullied or go through the hard things that you went through, but it's like in a way that's formed you who you are now. And now you're a machine. Sure. And now you've accomplished so much, but you wouldn't have gotten those type of lessons or built that chip on your shoulder if you didn't go through the things you went through. Let me ask you this. So you've had an incredible transition, right? So you talk about your fighting career, and I think a lot of athletes maybe are curious or uncertain on what to do once you don't have that professional career anymore. Certain people transition exceptionally well. Other people aren't really sure what to do. Maybe they get in trouble. Maybe they spend too much money. You've transitioned incredibly well. So what brought you into the fitness world, being an author? How was that transition like for you?
You know, it was actually fairly seamless because, again, I never really had a dream to fight. You know, I think what you're talking about is harder for people who lived their dream. You know, like Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. But I can't imagine how tough life without basketball must have been for him, because that's all he ever wanted to do.
Right.
LeBron James, all he ever wanted to do was play basketball. You know what I mean? In football, Ray Lewis, he just wanted to play football. I kind of got into it by accident. Like, truthfully, Max, all I ever wanted to do was play basketball. Like, I loved it. I just couldn't make the team. And the way I explain it to people, I'm 6'2", so I'm like your average guard in the NBA height, but I play like a guy who's 7'3". So I can't, I just don't have the skill set. You know what I'm saying? You can't play like a guy who's 7'3" when you're 6'3". It just doesn't. It doesn't work. And so all I wanted to do is play basketball. So I don't think I ever had transitionally oh my God, I'm not a fighter. What do I do? Because I never identified as a fighter. Fighting was something that I did. It wasn't who I am, and it wasn't my whole identity. So when it was time to walk away, it was actually like, well, I guess I'm on to the next thing. Now, at the same time, it wasn't fighting that rescued me from being bullied. It was fitness. So I always looked at myself as not always, once I kind of got beyond the bullying from, 16 years old on, I always looked at myself as a fitness guy. Like, that's what I identify with. So if you told me I could only pick one, fighting or fitness, I would pick fitness. And so the transition was easy into fitness for me. Right. Mentally. And I think there's a lesson in that for people. It's if you identify with your career and that's all you have, what do you do when that career's taken away? Like, you need to look at your job as something you do, not who you are.
That's such, Rob, I had breakfast with Rob Parker this morning in Orlando. And one of the things he told me, we had this conversation about, you don't want your career to define who you are. It's something that you have a passion for. It's something you do, but you're more than just your career. And it's so funny you say that. I'm actually obsessed with fitness myself. So like I said, I transitioned from fighting to basketball. Now I'm like, okay, I want to be the best sports broadcaster I could be. I have certain goals I'm trying to reach, but every day I'm in the gym. And I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins, but he's a huge inspiration of mine. It's that consistency day in and day out. I'll never miss a day, no matter the time, early morning, late night. I'll always be in the gym at some point in that day. So when I looked at your page, it gave me those David Goggins types of vibes. It's like your consistency is unreal. So how did you create this brand? Like, I think it's incredible what you do and how you've been able to create it. And it's like, it's contagious. I go on I see you doing dips or lunges or certain type of, I actually do have some deadlifting questions, but it makes me want to do it. How did you go about that? Just utilizing social media the right way?
No, I learned to be authentic. So I'll tell you my biggest regret with my UFC career, not being who I am. And I had this idea, and I don't know how much old sports tape that you've watched, but in Canada, the golden one, the great one, the greatest team sport athlete of all time in any sport, Wayne Gretzky, had an image. And that man always spoke right. He always said please and thank you. He was always humble. He always wore a suit. That's the way I thought athletes were supposed to be. And I mean, even for all the stuff that came out about Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, my memory in high school of Michael Jordan is him being very contrite, polite, and wearing a suit. I remember a specific interview with him when he was asked about the refs, and he's like, it's wrong to blame the refs. The refs work really hard. We couldn't play the game without them. We have to go out and do our jobs better. And you're like, that is not Michael Jordan. But at the time, that's how he presented himself. That's how a lot of athletes presented themselves. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
I thought the people I looked up to anyway, that's how I had to be. And there were times in interviews where people would ask me, hey, what got you into fighting? And I want to give you the answer I just gave you. Yeah, this guy said I could fuck some ring girls, I could get paid, I could punch some people in the face. Like, I just want to be honest with you like I am with my boys. But what I would do is say, I wanted to pick something that was challenging. I'm humbled and honored to be here. I'm fortunate. Like, I wanted to be the consummate professional. But that doesn't drive engagement. It doesn't drive sales. And the two guys that have done that better than anybody are Logan and Jake Paul. Like, you just got to be that guy, And so what I learned over time was I don't have to pretend to be anything I'm not. I'm just going to talk to the world like I would talk to you while we're watching a sports game. And so when I'm on live now with Ryan Hollins and Brendan Haywood and you, I will fucking shit talk you guys because that's what I do. And it's funny. And I expect you to do it back to me. You know what I'm saying? But I used to go through this thing where it was like, I don't want to shit talk right now because I don't want to be taken the wrong way. Well, why do I care what other people think and what other people say? Those are the 10 words that will ruin your life. What will other people say? What will other people think? So now I just tell you what I want to tell you and live my truth. And that's how I build my brand, because I think that people can feel that and they feel that it's real and they see that it's real. And that even goes down to the fact of, like, my kid was in the video today. Like, I do my podcast. I'm a dad. Like, I just don't try to hide anything. I just try to put all my stuff out there. And so I think it makes it relatable to people.
And I think that's actually key now. In a weird way, that's the best way to be. I mean, like you said, the Jake Paul, the Logan Paul, the Conor McGregors, you're going to be who you are. You're going to speak how you want to speak, and you're not disrespectful. You're just who you are.
Yep.
And I appreciate it. I definitely want to take some tips on weight gaining. I see your process. I'm actually trying to do the same. It's a lot harder for me. I think my metabolism is ridiculous, but that's a very good point. I want to bring up Jake and Logan Paul, but before that, I wanted your take on Conor McGregor, because I actually did a podcast on this. And someone who does fitness, such as yourself, you watch his workout videos, and it doesn't seem. I don't really think it's what he's doing. And when you see his performances, and what Marvin Hagler had, the famous quote, and it was like, it's hard to wake up in silk sheets at 6 a.m. and do hard work when you have all that success. Do you think we will see that hardcore Conor McGregor, the original Conor McGregor, ever again? Or can't beat Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is elite. So do we just give Dustin credit? Maybe just Conor can't beat Dustin.
Man, here's my view on it. And obviously I don't know Conor. I don't talk to him. So this is my 30,000-foot view. I think he needs to refocus where his motivation is coming from. And I don't know if that's possible. You see, for a guy like Conor McGregor, I think his motivation was to become rich, was to get himself out of poverty, was to make it for himself and get some generational wealth. He's done all that. How do you restart the engine? One of the things that I talk about in goal setting is sometimes for some people, the worst thing you can do is accomplish your goal. Because then what? What do you do after you accomplish your goal? And so to give you an example, if your goal was to just play one game in the NBA, what do you do after you play that game? Where do you go from there? Where's your motivation? Now, on the other hand, a guy like Michael Jordan, he was trying to be the greatest to ever live. So he's not just competing with the past greats and the present greats. He's competing with some kid in the year 2096 that hasn't been born yet. Like, he wants to cement his legacy. Tom Brady's the same way. 7 Super Bowls is not enough for Tom. He wants 8, he wants 9, he wants 10. Like, he wants to go down as the greatest of all time, and he has to make sure nobody catches him. So that's a never-ending well of motivation. But if you have I just want to do this once, I just want to do this, I just want to do this, motivation can run out pretty fast. So you're getting into the sportscasting thing. Let me ask you a question. Do you just want to work for ESPN, or do you want to be the most well-known sportscaster of all time?
I want to be the best to ever do it. Yeah, I want to be the well-known, the best to ever do it, to a point where I may grow my brand through a ESPN, a Fox Sports, but it gets to the point where kind of what Joe Rogan has been able to build, where he obviously signed $400 million to Spotify, but he talks to whoever he wants, whenever he wants. And I really enjoy communicating with people and having conversation and learning about different things.
Yeah. So
that's my
so my example of that, if you just wanted to write for the local paper, and then you'll never get beyond writing for the local paper. If you have that goal, you'll keep growing and growing and growing. So my point, to round it all up, Conor McGregor, is if his goal is to get rich, and now he's rich, what now?
Right.
Like, he's accomplished everything. Like, where is that deep? And if you don't have that, it is really hard to compete at the top level of the game. And so I think he needs to find a new why. And I don't know if that's possible because it's so multifaceted.
Right. And the time obviously isn't on your side, especially in the fight game. So you don't really have too much time to figure it out. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. My last question for this would be, thank you again for joining me.
No problem.
We talked about Jake. We talked about Logan. We have Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley. Jake Paul's actually the slight betting favorite. Now, of course, Vegas odds, it's more than just who they think is going to win. It's the betting line and wagers and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, Jake Paul, obviously, like you said, he knows how to market and brand himself, but don't kid yourself. I know he is putting in the work. He clearly is dedicated to the sport. But Tyron Woodley, back nine of his career, never had a boxing match. So it is a different sport, but obviously a much better athlete than a Ben Askren. Clearly has more power. Wrestling background, but had that right hand. He has a boxing background. How do you see that fight going?
Okay, I'm gonna answer this in a little bit of a long-winded way.
Go ahead.
Do you know what the Iron Man is?
Talking about Tony Stark, or are you talking about longevity?
No, I'm talking about the sport.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Running, swimming.
Yeah.
Do you think the best Iron Man athlete in the world is a good cyclist? No, cannot make the Tour de France. Good's a relative term. You know what I'm saying? And so when you got to be good at cycling, running, and swimming, you're never really great at one of them. Boxing is not MMA. And MMA is not boxing. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So some of these guys that were great fighters like Tyron Woodley, this is a brand new sport. Like, sure, there are similarities, but let's look at football. You know what I'm sick and tired of? All these basketball guys that are like, oh, I could play in the NFL. Maybe, but like, how good do you think you would have been? And then the other thing is, just because you're a good football player doesn't mean you can go play in the NBA.
Look at Michael Jordan. Baseball was hard.
That's the thing. And the other thing is like, dude, I got a 40-inch vertical, and you've seen me do seated box jumps onto a 50-inch box. It doesn't mean I'm out there like Isaiah Ryder or Vince Carter. Like, it's harder than that. And so for people to think that just because Tyron Woodley like won some stuff in the UFC that he's going to be, winning boxing, I think that's a mistake. Now, is he better suited to box than like some scrub from the 7-Eleven? Absolutely. But here's what people don't understand about like Jake Paul. Jake Paul's not doing this as a hobby in his basement. He's training 4 hours a day with legitimate boxing trainers. He's not training with a local boxing instructor down at the YMCA or like at Gold's Gym. He's working with some of the best people in the world. He's working with the same people that worked with like Oscar De La Hoya or Floyd Mayweather, or you know what I mean? Like he's going to go see Freddie Roach and get boxing lessons. He's not working with scrubs. Like he's taking this seriously. So as much as you want to hate the guy and rip on him, man, he's putting in this full-time thing. So you got to give him the respect that is due. And I think that could Tyron Woodley knock him out with a punch? Yes, it's a fight. Like that can happen. But I think people are underestimating the level of craftsmanship, the level of dedication, the level of seriousness that Jake Paul brings to this thing.
Right. And I agree with that. Now, I think Logan may be the better athlete. Jake's the better polished boxer. Like when you watch them compete, I think Jake picks it up more naturally than his brother.
Yeah,
but
I agree with you that I think he's a better fighter. But
yeah,
let me give you another example here with basketball, because I just thought of this. There's a big difference between me going and hooping by myself in my driveway and then me learning how to cross over from Darren Williams, watching game film with LeBron, and then sitting down with Phil Jackson and learning about the triangle. Actually, I'll go with Ted Johnson, but you know what I'm saying? Like, dude, do you know how good I would be at basketball in 4 years if I was doing that stuff for 6 hours a day?
Yeah. Right.
I'm not saying I'd make the NBA. I'm just saying
you get better.
Dude, that's what Jake is doing, and that's what people don't get. And I think they're blinded by his mouth. They want to see him lose so bad, they don't understand the work that man is putting in right now.
I 100% agree. And the more you watch him and the more you watch him talk, like he gets it. Like he knows what he's doing. And it is Conor-esque. I'm not saying that he's Conor McGregor, but it is Conor-esque because Conor, he was putting in the work. That's like you said, that was his goal. That's what he wanted. But everyone just sees the talking. You want to see him lose. But the guy's putting in work behind the scenes.
That's how you make money. That's why I didn't make money. Because I was scared to be myself. Like right. You want to speak, you want to talk that noise. In fact, you don't even want to talk that noise. You want to take your volume level, and I call turning it up. So let's talk about Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson probably walking around his house is a 3 or a 4. He gets in front of this, he turns it up to a 10. That's the skill, and that's what Jake's doing. But that doesn't discount his hard work. Doesn't mean he's not good at what he does, and that's a big mistake we make in society. Right. You know what I'm saying? We assume because King James is making Space Jam that he ain't working hard.
Oh, he's working.
He ain't watching his videotape, that he ain't. Dude, I wouldn't make that mistake. We assume because he looks good and he's athletic, he's not studying other teams' playbooks. You know? That's
It's a good point. I got in a debate with Rob Parker this morning. I'm like, don't count out. He's like, we're talking about the age and the roster. I'm like, don't count out the conversation we had. Don't count out the Lakers. When you get a hungry, motivated, like you said, rested LeBron who's going to get some rest, don't count that guy out. But
nope. But we want to see, and you get complacent too, right? Like you almost, because you're so used to the man's greatness, you almost got to pick it. Like the fact nobody voted him as the best player on earth right now, that's sad. Like someone had to think he would. It is what it is. But it's like my thing is, you get caught seeing all the forward-facing stuff, and you don't understand what goes on behind the scenes. And so that's where people are, I think, sleeping on Jake Paul a little bit. And if I had to bet, like really bet, I would bet on him, not Woodley. Wow. Now, I'm not saying Woodley can't win. Woodley's no scrub. But and anything can happen in a fight. But, man, I'm probably betting on Jake. And remember who, and this is a kind of final thing with combat sports, you know, if the UFC is matchmaking, they're matchmaking based on who's going to sell more tickets, blah, 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 blah. But we know matchups matter. Do you think Jake Paul just pulled Tyron's name out of a hat, or do you think he was selected to fight Jake Paul? Jake Paul could have fought like 10 people. He's selecting that dude for a reason. Again, it doesn't mean he's guaranteed a win, but he is hand selecting all his opponents. So there's something about that matchup stylistically that Jake Paul thinks he can exploit. Otherwise, he wouldn't take the fight.
You're right. And it's the most gain. You're beating a UFC champion. Like that's that's something that pops to people that are just the average consumer. He just beat a UFC champion.
Sure, but he's not going after a 240. He's not going after Francis.
No,
Do you know what I mean?
No, he's not.
He's not going after a heavyweight boxing champion. He's not going after man, who did I just see? It was a basketball player that wanted to fight Riddick Bowe.
No, it was a football. Miles Garrett wants to box Logan Paul.
No. It's someone wanted to fight Riddick Bowe. Dude, you're gonna get fucking killed. That was my reaction. I'm like, let me see who it is. I'm gonna Google it here because this is actually an interesting story. Because Riddick Bowe was like the legit heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to be careful. Like you said, matchups make the fight.
Celebrity fight. Oh, shit. Okay. Lamar Odom wants a piece of Riddick Bowe. He's going to get hurt.
Yeah, you'll seriously get hurt. They won't clear that. There's no way.
They can't let that happen.
No.
And my point is, people forget how good these dudes are.
Yeah.
But like Jake Paul's not selecting a dude like that. And by the way, when Logan fought Floyd, he's not fighting Evander Holyfield, who's 240 pounds. He's fighting a guy that walks around at $155 soaking wet. Like with bigger gloves, and they're wearing 10s instead. Like it's just people forget it's kind of contrived.
Yeah.
So I gotta think that Jake Paul really broke down tape on Tyron, watched him, did whatever, and really believes he can win.
And I agree. And I think I won't be surprised. Like you said, if I had to bet my money, I would bet it on Jake. Bobby, I really appreciate you coming on my show, giving me your time. Where can people listening follow you? You obviously post phenomenal content. You go on Instagram Live. You talk hoops, social media, websites. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, there's two basic ways. Number one, just type Bobby Maximus into anything. Like it's the way the world works, right? Google, I don't know if Bing still exists. Yahoo search, like just type in Bobby Maximus, you'll find me. That's the number one way. Number two way, and I want to put a word of caution out there for the kids, because like this is not something you want a piece of. If you ever really want to get the true Bobby Maximus experience, wait till midnight, go in your bathroom, turn off the lights, and say Bobby Maximus 5 times into the mirror. You probably don't want what's going to happen next. So those are the two ways you can find me if you want to see me.
I appreciate it. Well, like I said, it was definitely an honor. And anytime you want to come on the podcast, you're more than welcome to. So I
love what you're doing. And I got to say, I like Rob Parker a lot. I had a little bit of emotion of jealousy when I saw you hanging out with that man.
Yeah, I met him through Rashad Phillips a couple years ago when Rashad made an appearance on The Herd. He made an appearance on The Odd Couple. We kind of linked. And I got to meet everyone. He took me under his wing, and now I hopefully will be out there soon to do some work with him. But obviously, COVID and the way things are working, it's kind of hard right now. But
no, and I say that because he's another one. I think he's like Joy Taylor in that regard. He's really good at what he does without being overly sensational. Like I find like the sportscasting world, and it'd be interesting to hear your views on this, is like there's a lot of guys that are just saying shit to say shit and they got their hot take. And it's hard for me to watch because I know it's disingenuous. But like I feel there's a group of people, Joy Taylor, Bomani, Rob Parker, L. Duncan, I like a lot, that just kind of like tell their thoughts like it is. Jackie McMullen, I think, is great.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Maria Taylor,
Ryan's one of those guys. Yeah, Ryan's one of those. Perk, I like Perk, but I really think Rob, like when I have breakfast with Rob, it's not my first time being around him, but he's one of the most genuine people I've ever met. Rashad Phillips is like this. Like you said, he's not doing anything for the hot take. He's not saying anything he really doesn't mean just to get clicks. Like he puts some serious thought into it, and he tells you how he truly feels. And like you said, you don't get that a lot right now, especially because the way social media works. Negative truly draws more attention than positive, and tearing people down and clicks and hot takes. So it is unique to see people who are just being authentic.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing with Rob Parker. If he came over to watch a game, I think I would get Rob Parker. And I like Stephen A. Smith. I have a lot of respect for all these people and the craftsmanship they put in. But I think if Steven came to watch a game, he would be different than what I would expect. I think Skip would probably be a lot more toned down in my basement watching football, maybe not watching the Cowboys, than he is when he's on the show. Does that make sense to you?
No,
I feel like Rob Parker would be that exact guy you get, and that's why I love him.
He's awesome. He's as real as it gets. I mean, we're debating sports at the breakfast table, and he has the same takes he does on air. Like, that's just who he is. So
yeah, he's one of my favorites. I love the man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. So we'll talk soon, and until next time.